welcome to ScreenHour with me, Mikey.
Me, Kieran.
The show where we give you our own impressions and experiences for films, series and games.
We'll start by sharing our initial spoiler-free impressions and we'll warn you before we deep dive into those spoilers.
If you enjoy our content, don't forget to follow us on your preferred platforms with our handle, ScreenHour.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the highly anticipated film Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1. I think there is one big problem with this film, and that is the fact that it is a two-parter. There's little things here and there with it, for sure, like every film, but I want to know what happens next. I want my conclusion, and I felt really weird leaving the cinema without that full conclusion, but that's literally my be-all and end-all right there. That's the only flaw. I fucking loved it.
It's very much what it's marketed to be, in the sense that, and what you anticipate it to be. It is like the best action franchise
Ever.
Out at the moment. It has been for the last few years.
Since Ghost Protocol, I reckon it's been like, that sort of bigger and better stunts sort of thing. It's like your anticipation. You didn't really have that anticipation before Ghost.
Yes, I don't know. 3 was good. I think.
Oh no, 3. I definitely think 3 is amazing. Like, it's one of my favorites. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman's villain is probably the best villain for the entire franchise. But in terms of stunts, Ghost Protocol was the first one that really caught everyone's attention with the Burj Khalifa. Blue is glue, red is dead.
Yeah, it is just non-stop, balls to the wall, great scene after great scene. There is, like, when I was watching it and I thought to myself, there is just a few tiny little niggly things, but that is just my brain just looking for them.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time, as from having, like, going from the point of view of having a good time at the cinema, you cannot get better than these, like, just feel good romp action films. And also in the sense that it's not a martial arts film, it's not a car film, it is a just straight up down the middle good action film where it marries both.
It doesn't stick to a specific genre. It's action, it's comedy, it's drama, sometimes a bit of thrill and suspense in there, and even romance. So it's always blurring the lines between what it kind of wants to be and what it is. It's always just testing the waters of, like, oh, you'll think with this, we're actually going to be doing more like this. And I feel like it sort of earned that ability to sort of bend the rules as such. Because I was watching it and I was like, in my head, I think of it as a much more serious film than it is. And then you start watching it and you go, oh, they're cracking out a couple of jokes here. And you're like, no, wait, no, they do that, don't they? Like, Tom is mid-stunt doing something absolutely insane, and then Benji's talking to him through the ears and, saying, oh, don't do this, go that way, don't go left, go right, go right, go right. And he's like, I'm jumping out of a window, such as like from Fallout. And, and you forget that those are like, that's a little niche that it's got for itself, that it's allowed to be cheeky in those serious, dramatic moments of high intensity. And it really works to its benefit.
To piggyback off that point, I think what it does well is, this is the 7th film in the franchise. I'm pretty sure the first one came out in 1996, maybe.
Yep.
And it's very aware. It's not meta. It's not breaking the fourth wall, but it's very aware that this is the 7th one. And it knows that some of the things it's doing are like tropes of their own, it's almost making a rod for its own back, but taking that rod and using it as a weapon. It's got to the point now, because they've made these tropes themselves, they can use them as for laughs. And whether it will be disarming bombs, or whether it will be like the guy in the chair cliche and trope, that is, again, it's played for laughs in appropriate points.
It's not overdone.
But it's not overdone. There's an interview on Film 4.
Did you watch that one I sent you?
Yeah, is this the same one? I got to,
Yeah, it's the one I sent you, and I said don't watch it until afterwards because I was like, it shows a bit too much.
it shows quite a few scenes, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, not too much narrative, but it does show like if you watch that, then you're halfway through the film, you're like, I'm waiting for this scene. So yeah, exactly. But Christopher McQuarrie says there's quite a few like character moments in this one, and I feel like there is. And what's good about it, he doesn't hit you over the head with it. It's quite subtle, like romantic parts, and also parts which show you more of Ethan, the type of person he is. But you know, at the end of the day, he's been in every one.
Yeah, so we've really got to learn who he is anyway.
But it does flesh him out a little bit more. I think its strength is in the last couple in particular, more so since probably, like you said, Ghost Protocol onwards. And I'm going to rewatch Thingy, to be fair, this week probably. Is number 3. But Ghost Protocol onwards, it's always been like Tom Cruise's franchise, but it's been more ensemble. They have introduced more people.
Since Ghost, it felt more ensemble, for sure. And I think, for me as well, I think we've had some brilliant people come in and go. And I think I do miss Jeremy Renner. And I do miss, I can't remember the actress's name. I've just forgot the character's name. Literally, I know this, her name. Hold on, I'll literally be 2 seconds. Ghost. What's she called? She plays Jane. Paula Patton. I think it's a shame they haven't been able to get her back because I did like her character and I'd love to have seen that sort of develop and grow. But yeah, it's a shame we haven't been able to get back. I don't know the logistics of everything, but there we are.
Storm and Peg's Benji, Vig Rhames. Vig Rhames always feels like he's a welcome present, and I remember
he's a calming influence, I feel like, across everything.
He's in all of them, apparently. And he's like a voice of reason, and like you say, a calming presence for him. Benji brings like, the Simon Peggness of the jovial, but like warming presence. In more recent ones, Rebecca Ferguson, she's more like kind of mysterious, sexy, but quite vulnerable.
She's the female Tom, or the female Ethan, should I say?
Yeah, and she really goes toe to toe, to toe. And you said Ali Plum interview on BBC Radio 1. Well, not on Radio 1, technically on YouTube. With Hayley Atwell, and he says like, obviously Tom Cruise stars in it, but this is your film. And my double-edged sword for this is Hayley Atwell does steal the show, and she's really good. She's charming. She's quite badass. She's a character in her own right. But halfway through, there's like a narrative thing, I think, which happens, and I don't like it. It's like the only thing I don't like in the entire film, really, which sticks out. But she is good.
It's an odd one because it is Hayley's film. As much as, Tom is the bill, it's his name on the poster. Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, They're Reckoning Part 1. That is the title of the film. But it really is Hayley's film. And I have to say, after the back of the last film we recorded, this is so... Hayley is literally one of the best female written characters I've seen for a very long time. And I had such an issue with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in Dial of Destiny. And Mikey just said that I had a problem with women in films being strong, and that is definitely far from the truth.
Not say that, I just said you have a problem with modern women in modern films.
Everything that film did wrong, this film did right. So she was sincere, but she was not hypocritical or disingenuous. She was capable, yet not chauvinistic or obstinate. She was endearing, enchanting, even quite beguiling.
I don't think she was sincere at all, though.
She wasn't abhorrent or obtuse. She wasn't a know-it-all, and she leant on Ethan when she needed to. And when push came to shove, she did what she had to in order to survive. Did she win her fight against the male antagonists? No. But does that make her weak and a frail woman that is too weak to become a strong role model for young girls? Scientifically, men are bigger and stronger. That is a fact. But the way that McHugh, Tom, and the team didn't overstep the bounds of reality by adhering to the woke Hollywood, by buying into this strong female lead. Even Emily Blunt said, and this is a direct quote, It's the worst thing ever when you open a script and read the words strong female lead. That makes my eyes roll. I'm already out. I'm bored. Those roles are written as incredibly stoic. You spend the whole time acting tough and saying tough things, end quote. It's not realistic. And then they end up writing someone who is all too powerful and not relatable in the slightest. Now, Hayley's Grace has flaws because she's human. She's a thief and not a super hulk of a spy with years of training. And she fought like she was fighting for her life, unlike Rebecca, who plays Ilsa Faust, who has that training, the experience to use her opponent's strength against them. And she even came up short occasionally across her appearances in the franchise. Like, they have continuously shown the real of the situations. Women can be strong whilst being vulnerable. It's not like Ethan is all powerful either. You know, he too has his own limits. And I don't think Tom does, but Ethan does. And he has weaknesses, and it's how we overcome those flaws in our being to be better. Helena in Dial of Destiny just didn't expose any weaknesses. She just turned a cold shoulder to everything. She had no warmth to connect with, and she just carried on like this boss-ass bitch. But that is not relatable or even realistic. Like, we need to be vulnerable at times in order to grow and succeed. You know, like a typical well-designed character arc. And that was just like a massive thing that film didn't have that this film does, and it could not have worked so perfectly that one was the way it was and this one's the way this one is. Like, this is so much better in every fucking way it could possibly be, and I'm so glad of that. So I don't have a problem with modern women in modern films. It's because they're not written properly, done wrong, and this they did it right, and they should be proud of that. Because Hayley fucking nails it.
There's a couple of things to unpack of that. I think number one is you were always going to like whatever woman was in this film because it was a Tom Cruise, Christopher Carey gig. It's a Mission Impossible film. Unless they copy and pasted Helena from Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, nothing like that. Everything I said in the last episode still stands in my opinion. But Hayley Atwell, she's, for the most part, Kieran really is like right in describing her character, like, and she's just, don't know what you want to call it, because you call the MCU, or the Mission Impossible verse, whatever, the canon they've created. She's quite a fresh air, like, she's a breeze, like, she's a bit of fresh air. She
doesn't feel like a character we've had before.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, yeah. But at the same time, she's endearing, but she's quite, lethal in her own way. Yeah, she's just good. She really is. But there's just some bits in it which didn't sit with me. But at the same time, every scene she's in is a good one. And
she's in most scenes.
And she is in I don't know if I'll put a number on it, 7 out of 10 scenes. All the action scenes she's in, she's great. Particularly the Fiat 500. That's gold.
It is? It's yellow?
Well, it would have to be gold, wouldn't it? But the only character which I just feel was meh. Gabriel, the new villain. So the plot is you got to get the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin controls the entity, this be-all and end-all AI. It's Google meets Alexa meets the entire, it's AI, it'll kill you. It's knows fucking everything,
It's Skynet before Skynet.
It's weaponized, yeah, it's Skynet. And you get the MacGuffin, you can weaponize that. And Gabriel, all the way his action scenes and his presence when he's doing a fight scene or when he's in an action scene is great. But when he's having a sit down or when he's got he's just generally talking, his character acting is his acting's good, but I just think his writing, I don't know what they want to do with his writing, because they're pushing one thing, which I'll get to in spoilers, and his other part of his character just doesn't meet up. They kind of conflict, and because they're conflicting, his character just becomes pretty meh. And when you've got the only other new character which is introduced is Hayley Atwell's character, which I've forgotten her name, to be fair.
Grace. Is
Grace versus Gabriel. She stands absolutely over him in every aspect. And I know she's meant to be more of the new protagonist, but doesn't mean your antagonist shouldn't be just as an interesting and exciting. Like at the end of the day, like as much as I like Christian Bale and Batman in the Dark Knight, everyone bums off the Dark Knight because of Heath Ledger's Joker. Like,
protagonist is only as good as your antagonist and vice versa. And I don't disagree with your point. His character, as I said at the top of the episode, the best villain I think this franchise has seen was Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. I can't remember his character's name now. But he was so dark and just without remorse. Whereas I think all the other characters have a bit more sort of humanity to them. Even though some of the stuff they did do was wrong, there was an element of humanity there. But his character was just rotten. But in this, Gabriel, I think there's still a lot more to come from his character, because we see a bit of a breakdown from his character literally in the last frame we see him in. It's the first time we actually see him lose this element of control. And I think there's a lot more sort of character development to come from him. I want to sort of be a bit more reserved on how I think I should say about that character, because I do think there's more to come. But at the same time, they had 2.5 hours to at least give us some sort of characterization for him, at the very least.
Vanessa Kirby's character is great, interesting, sexy, and just another welcome addition.
I think they did a great job with Vanessa in this one. I thought she was all right in Fallout. She plays the broker, but it didn't feel. It felt like not a cameo part, but up from a cameo part, but less an ensemble. But she felt ensemble in this one. She felt more part of the cast, more part of everyone. And there's a particular scene that happens on the train cart that I was like, this is brilliant. There's some really good acting. Mention that a bit later on when we hit their spoilers.
What I'd like about it, and we said near the start of the episode, is that there's elements of it being self-aware and funny, but that also flows into that it knows it's after, a MacGuffin, a thing it's got to chase after. It's got to get this, it's got to get that. And I like, they take the object seriously, because otherwise the film would fall flat. But it's very aware that it's got to chase that. Another third party element I like is him going rogue, and again they address that in the the Mission Impossible verse. It's a trope which I'm pretty sure I don't know, 7 films, and he's probably gone rogue in 5 of them. And again that gets addressed in the writing itself, a couple of the characters point out, and the CIA. I thought this when I was always naming the credits, in the start credits, and then he turned up. Shea Wiggum is always he's always a great supporting actor, but he's never the leading star. And Shea Wiggum's basically the lead CIA agent after him, the older one, and is him, and is the younger black chap. And those two work really well, their scenes after chasing Ethan. But Shea Wiggum's absolutely great, and he should be in more stuff, but in this role, he again whatever he's in, he just fits the bill. There is no bad scene in this film. It is a straight up green badge for me. In fact, if I had more time, the cinema by me is it's £4. I'd probably just go see it again. I think Kieran's already seen it twice, but at the same time, the only problems I have with it are little narrative bugs. There's no bad scene. There's little just narrative annoying things.
There's just a little thing. It's you were this close to greatness. It's just you just tweak that little bit here or that little bit there, and it's but when you've already hit the mark so many times, you're about to have a slip up here or there, sort of thing. I think, as we said, the biggest flaw is the fact that it's a 2-parter. So we're so used to mission films having a conclusion, and we can come away feeling satisfied, as it were. But in this one, you sort of get a sort of satisfaction of the team now hold all the cards, but there's still so much more to explore. There's still the end game, as it were. But another thing that I think is a flaw, not with the film, but with the marketing I watched every fucking behind the scenes, every trailer, everything possible because I wanted to soak up as much as I could for this film because I was so excited to see it. And I think that was to my own detriment because when I went to see the film and I experienced the stunts, such as the motorcycle jump, it didn't hit me as hard as it should have because I'd already seen it on YouTube many times prior already. So when I saw it happen on the big screen for the very first time, it was like, oh yeah, that's that jump. Oh, okay. And I was like, oh no, I shouldn't have felt like that after I saw that. I should have felt more impactful. But because I've already seen it, it sort of, it ruined that for me. So
I don't know. I was looking forward to it because of that there. Because I'd saw it, probably because you've watched it a lot more to do with it. I'd watched it like the trailers like 2 or 3 times. And I knew I was just going to see it and I was looking forward to it. So I was already sold.
I never said I wasn't looking forward to it. I just mean, but the moment came when it happened, I was like, oh shit, this is about to do the jump. It's about to do the jump. And I was like, yeah, he's done it. And I've seen it already. I know it just didn't hit me as much. And I feel like the trailer itself was actually really good because it's so ambiguous. You can't really piece anything together. But then with all the behind the scenes, they're trying to basically sell the fact that Tom does his own stunts. And I'm already fully aware of that. But when they're really trying to draw that home for everybody else, it's my own detriment. I shouldn't have watched so many videos as I did.
I think they've just got to make it appeal to the general audience, not the people who are hardcore, like Christopher McQuarrie, Tom Cruise fans, or like people who do podcast. I think they've got to bring it broader appeal.
Yeah, I think I've had to learn my lesson this time round. So then for part 2, I think I will watch the trailer, but then any behind the scenes stuff they release, I've got to force myself not to watch it, just so when I watch the scene itself in the cinema, I can be like, holy fucking shit. But I just hope, especially with this one, it's plastered everywhere over the internet. Like you're checking through reels or stories or whatever, and it's just there. He's doing the stunt, and it's like, no, you can't escape this film. It is everywhere, and rightly so. If you only go to the cinema once a year, this is the film you go and see. This or Oppenheimer, but as it stands at the moment, this is the film you go and see.
Even I got on a limb here and say, unless you're a history buff or World War II buff, or like you like dramatic films, if you don't go to cinema often, you just want like a fun blockbuster, just go see, like Kieran says, go see this over Oppenheimer. Because as much as I like Nolan, Oppenheimer is going to be a very character study, like drama film or whatever. It's a totally different kettle of fish. But something to praise this on, and like Kieran says, it's no real surprise. But it has been for the last few ones, and like in general, really, the action scenes being as real as they possibly could. It really just works. Like you see it and you feel it more. It feels more intense. To the point, like Kieran's slightly point in all the behind the scenes stuff, Grace, how they always saying, being as Grace, she's got to learn how to drift. She's doing all that stunt work. And Tom Cruise was saying, when they were doing that, he's watching her because he's done it countless times. He knows how to do it. But like as Ethan is acting, but also as Tom is looking.
He's producing, yeah.
He says he's producing. I honestly feel like now it's got to the point where he might as well be co-directing.
Yeah.
And this isn't a slight on him, because it obviously, between him and Christopher McQuarrie, it obviously fucking works. But
yeah, it's a great club.
It's a partnership with all the actors, like as you say, in a positive way. That when we get to set, they're rewriting it there and then, or producing it. They're thinking of better ideas for the action scenes. But no, it is a full-on-heartedly green badge.
I've been to see it once so far. I haven't. That's another thing here in the UK. It released on a Monday, which was shit because I'm working 12-hour shifts. So trying to fucking find time to jump and see it has been a pain in the ass. But I managed to see it on opening night. I forced myself to go see it. I was absolutely shattered afterwards. As soon as I got home, I went straight to bed. And I wanted to go see it again, but I haven't had a chance yet. But I will be seeing it, I think, Friday. Today is Wednesday, if anyone cares. So I will hopefully be seeing it again Friday, and there's a possibility I'll probably see it again as well. But it's the film you go to the cinema for, just because you want to see the stunts and have the surround sound and the action and everything like right there. Like, I can't top the experience I had when I watched Top Gun and hearing the jets and everything flying overhead. That was fucking incredible for me. And I haven't seen Mission in IMAX yet, because the only time that was available for when I could slot in was just a casual 2D viewing, but I will be seeing it in IMAX when I can find time to get in. And hopefully it hits, you know, like I hope it hits. But definitely just go and see it. Trust us. If you trust nothing else we say, trust this.
Yeah, it's a great film. Like, trust us on this, and like, you will just have a good time watching it. Like, unless for some reason you hate having an exciting time watching a film, which obviously you like to think that's why most people go watch a film. The only like quick thing I would say, non-spoilerish, and Kieran's like put on it and saying it's got a re-release on a Monday, and the reason they've done that is like, yeah, touching on both real bullet point things Kieran said, is that because of Christopher Nolan up and on him, is the sense that they brought all the IMAX branches and all the IMAX showings, so they put it on a Monday, so they'll have 10 days of an IMAX run as opposed to a week, particularly in the UK.
Yeah, but why not the Saturday before the Monday? Or the Friday before the Monday? What, not a weekend earlier?
They should have just moved it straight up. Yeah, they probably like the competition, but how much that's done and won in the long run, I don't know. Only time can tell. But if you look at me and you both know, because we do a podcast and we do films, the window and like the release window for films in July compared to August is virtually fuck all.
Yeah.
It is proof in the pudding in the sense that they are confident in their product, and as a viewer you can see it's a different kettle of fish, and it is a great product.
It's just a bit of an expensive time to go to the cinema.
But now, down to spoilers. Before we deep dive into spoilers, we're going to give you a green badge. You need to go experience it as soon as you can, and we'll expand further in a moment or so.
We'd also like to take this time to sincerely thank you for listening to us, and if you would like to participate in an episode, you can leave your thoughts on what you'd like to see us cover next in the comments below or through our Instagram.
Remember, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple and Instagram with our handle ScreenHour. Now it's time to get into those spoilers.
Spoiler time!
My biggest problem with the narrative, well, there's two really, is Rebecca Ferguson's character, Elizabeth Faust, or Eliza Faust, whatever her name is.
Elsa,
she has, I think she came in Rogue Nation, so she's in Rogue Nation and she's in Fallout.
yeah, she's in 2. This is her 3rd.
She is great. Like, her being like a part of the team,
But also not.
she's also a bit menacing, but she helps them, and then she's a bit annoying. And again, you don't look at things on a 2D level, especially if you're looking up for narrative, but you just go from there, like, their archetypes. And this is a fact. She's British. She's a brunette. She's good looking. What's Hayley Atwell? She's British. She's a brunette. She's good looking. She's badass. Shows Rebecca Ferguson.
Rebecca Ferguson's Swedish.
Well, she plays a British character.
Yeah, I know.
Kieran, you're too pedantic. What happens in this film? Rebecca Ferguson's character dies, and I'm not kidding. The scene later, they literally sit Hayley Atwell's character down and say, "You've got a choice. You're going to join the team." And the character for the last 3 films, if you include this one, who has like been well received by everybody, just gets like undercut to fuck. You could have at least waited one scene, and it just doesn't happen. I found it just really weird in the sense that all of the other like scenes just flow really well, and it just doesn't give you no time to breathe or ingest that like kind of, because the Mission films, not many people who you really care about. Loads of people die in them, but not many people you care about die in them really.
Yeah.
And then she dies, and you're like, oh, that's a bit gutting. Especially in, I went for a piss, like, about probably a quarter way through.
Fucking hell, Grandad, you were talking about going for a piss in another film. So you drain the snake before you go into the cinema.
What's that hydrated? There's a scene like towards just before the nightclub scene, and where they're both Rebecca Ferguson and Tom Cruise's character just talking on an Italian rooftop. And it's quite not particularly mega romantic, but it's quite heartfelt. It's quite nice. It's warming. It's different.
It's the scene just after that on the gondola where they're just sort of slowly arriving towards the party, where that felt more romantic because they're sort of like they have that sort of look at each other, and Rebecca or Ilsa, she sort of like has this wry smile towards him, sort of like, you know, like admiration. And in that moment, there and then, the music, the lighting, everything, I was like, holy shit, this feels exactly like a Bond film, and the romance that you get from a Bond film, like it felt so right. And then obviously it went into like its Mission Impossible ways, which as of late is far better than any Bond film we've had for a long time. But that just particular moment, I was like, whoa, it really transported me back to like the very typical sort of romance and the heightened string moments of a Bond film, whereas, you know, it's the deep romance as Bond woos a woman. It's like that sort of just it, that this little moment happened. I was like, oh, I've been transported back to as a kid watching the old Bond films. I really like that moment. But as you say, her death. Now, I'm not going to say I saw her death coming, but I saw a death coming, because in an interview, Simon Pegg said something about,
And you should have died.
yeah, he said something about someone. He says, "Oh, maybe I won't be the next one. Maybe I'm dead," or something as a joke. And I was like, if anyone's going to die, it's either going to be Benji or Ilsa. I was like, I can't see them killing off Ving Rhames because he's the only black character.
Should have been Alec Baldwin. They could have killed Alec Baldwin.
It's already dead. You can't kill Hayley. She's brand new. You can't do that. You can't kill Vanessa Kirby because if she were to die, the stakes aren't high enough for Ethan yet. Ethan hasn't like really bonded with her enough to care about her if she lives or dies. So that would have been just sort of like a pointless death. So the only other people you could kill would be Benji, and Benji would make sense dying because he's been in the franchise the longest, and it would really hurt Ethan more if Benji were to die than for Ilsa to die, because obviously he's got that buddy relationship, whereas Ilsa's a bit more, she's a bit pricklier, but her and Ethan have that sort of, their goals are aligned and they respect each other, but they have different methods. And so there's always that great back and forth between them. And so I think if Benji were to die, it would have been more upsetting for Ethan, I think. But yeah, it was either Ethan or Ilsa or Benji. And yeah, I don't think either one needed to die. I think the way she did die, she went out guns blazing, as they say. She gave us a really good fight scene. I watched the fight scene go down. I was like, please don't let this be it. I was like, tell me she's going to die now. Because they lead up to it, don't they? They said one of the two people have got to die, either Hayley or Rebecca. And I was like, this is just like bad guy chatting shit. They're not actually going to do it, are they? And then when they start fighting on that little bridge over the canals, I was like, for fuck's sake, she's gonna croak here, isn't she? They're gonna pop her cogs. But the way the scene is done, with Tom fucking legging it to her to try and save her, sort of thing, it's so well done in the fact that you know he's running to save her, because it's starting to like dawn on you, like they're about to kill her off, they're about to kill her, and Tom's just legging it, and you're like, I don't think Tom's gonna make it. Sorry, Ethan. I don't think Ethan's gonna make it. And it's, do agree with you that it, like, they shouldn't have killed her off, because she's a great character. I really like her character, and I really like Rebecca as well. But I guess if I have to accept it, I will, because I don't wholeheartedly
It's not enough of a gripe to like ruin the film. It really isn't.
No.
It just feels like, why? It is just a straight up swap. That's what it feels like. If it doesn't feel like a straight up swap enough for you, the scene after she died, they say, do you want to be in the team? That's how much of a swap it is. But if she had just died, and then Hayley's Atwell characters you would have had to read your script quite a bit, but she would have got introduced a bit later on, or she would have joined the team more organically, it would have been more effective.
It did feel a little weird as well, because Tom and Hayley have had a lot of very like close face moments, haven't they? Where like basically their nose are touching and they're staring each other into the eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want them to make their relationship romantic.
Well, this is that's another thing, though, isn't it? The Rebecca Ferguson one almost was. And then she dies, and then it's like, oh, don't worry. He's got another hot woman to do his adventures with. Here's Hayley Atwell.
Yeah, no. I like how Julia's character moved on with someone else. And I love the way that was done in Fallout, where he runs up to the medical camp and then she goes like, Ethan? And he turns around and he's like, oh my gosh, she's here. And she's like, oh, you're here on a vacation? He's like, no, I'm working. And it's like, I love that scene. It's so well done because of everything that happened in number 3. And then you're watching Ilsa's reaction to Julia seeing Ethan, and you're like, oh my God, that's his wife. And that whole interplay, it's so well done. And then in this one, it's like, oh, well, Julia's off the table. Ilsa's dead. Please don't make Hayley the new romantic interest for Ethan. I understand she's incredibly attractive, right? And it makes sense. But please don't do it, because I just think it's way too soon after Ilsa, for one, as you say. Never mind just to join the team, to become his new romantic interest. That's way too fucking soon. I think it should just be the look of trust. That's all they're giving each other. He's like, trust me, please trust me. And she's like, I trust you. And I think that's how I want to perceive that look, that closeness between them. I don't want it to go further than that.
On top of that, if you done your little speech on how good Grace is, and if she wasn't that good, the bottom half of the film would fall flat on its face because of that straight up swap.
Yeah.
There's like so many good. The more I think about it, the more I feel that the little narrative writing decisions in worse films would be really bad. But the way this film is, the atmosphere, the excitement it gives you, and the chases and the stunts, it won't let you do that to it. It won't let you think that.
You just sort of overlook those little defects because there's so many other things to enjoy.
I really quite liked the scene with the CIA, and it's got a British comedian chap who's in it, and
Carrie Ells, who's in The Princess Bride.
I don't know who that actor is, but it's near the start, and
Pays Wesley.
Honestly, I haven't watched Princess Bride since I was a child because of children's film. But it's
degenerate.
I'm right. It's very evident someone's coming in with a mask on. Again, another Mission Impossible trope. And you think oh God, is the bad guy already going to kick off? That'll be cool. That would subvert expectation. But it's Tom, like,
it's Ethan.
Like, it's Ethan kicking off with Kittredge. And the introduction, like, is in the trailer, to be fair, but, spoiler talk. It's Kittredge is almost like he is in the first one, a bit of antagonist, but he's meant to be the good guy. But because Ethan's your good guy, he's the bad guy. Kittredge is the bad guy. Even though he works at the CIA, you're not rooting for him because you're rooting for Ethan. And what that scene does really well is it's almost like not drop the mic, it's drop the knockout gas. And he drops the knockout gas, and his introduction in that scene is, I'm Ethan, I'm back, and it really like puts him on the pedestal without being too corny. But again, every action scene is great. The Fiat 500, I like that. That didn't feel like it went on forever.
No, that's the thing. Like with the film as well, there is so much to digest because it just comes at you thick and fast. Like I feel like the first sort of maybe 20 to 30 minutes, it's actually very slow paced. You're sort of slowly getting into it, and you're like, oh, this feels quite slow. We haven't had like a big action moment yet. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, bah, 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 bah. And you're like, holy fucking shit, like, just throwing every action scene at us they possibly can. Before you know it, it's like, oh, end credits. You're like, hey, what? Huh? What happened? As I said, because it's a two-parter, you don't really have that conclusion. So you're like, oh, you can't end yet. But then you're like, oh, but it has. So, what am I thinking? And then you're just thinking back on everything you just saw, and you're recollecting everything, and you're like, wait, yeah, that scene happened. You're like, oh, but that scene happened like 2 hours ago. Jesus.
Yeah, the pacing is excellent.
There is so much to digest from that film. It is incredible. Like, I can really commend everything that they've done and put into this film. And as me and you have said, Mike, via messages, the stunts and everything felt necessary as well. They felt like they fit in. Because there's a moment when after he jumps from the train and he sort of, I don't know what they call it. I think it's kite surfing or something. That's actually like a big stunt thing that Tom's been training at doing, where you sort of like run off a hillside and then you like kite surf down the hillside. And it's not even technically a stunt in the film. Like, it's a stunt, but it's not showcased as a big spectacle stunt for us to see. We just basically see him paragliding down a little bit and then he lands next to Benji and gets in the BMW and they drive off. It's not seen as a big spectacle, but that in itself would have been another film's biggest stunt moment. And there's so many little moments of those big stunts that aren't classed as big stunts. They're just like, oh yeah, that was easy, mate. We do that all the time. When you really look at everything that's done, it's like, holy shit, there's so many different stunts and stuff in here, and everything just fits so seamlessly together. It's really well done. Like, the stunt choreography and the direction for that is incredible, to say the least.
I think even the hand-to-hand combat for the, like, I don't know, 95% of the time, is like really enjoyable to watch. Doesn't feel far-fetched. It is like, it balances the line between being smooth but like kind of being realistic. That's done really well. The only action scene I don't like, and I just felt like the cameras, it was quite, I don't know, it was very out of character for the Mission films in particular.
I might know the bit you're going to say.
It was like shaky camera, and it was all over the fucking shop. And it was just, I get what they tried to do, but it just didn't work. So when they're in the narrow alley, and it's Tom Cruise against Palm. Yeah, against Palm, and it just doesn't work for me. The camera's up in the air at some points, it's all over the shop. And it's uncharacteristic because a lot of them just do, if I remember correctly, I think in Fallout, when he's versus Henry Cavill, there's quite a few good like aerial shots / like establishing shots when they're further out and on the mountainside and the cliff edge, and you can see him just going toe to toe, and it looks great, like he feels cinematic. Well, it just feels like taped a GoPro to my dashhound's head, and you've dangled like bloody chicken in front of him, and he's just jumping up and down trying to film just a fight scene which is just in front of him.
I think the idea of it was because it was in an alleyway, it's meant to be confined, so trying to have that wide establishing shot wouldn't have worked. Obviously, you could put like a rig or something up above to establish the alleyway itself, to just emphasize how narrow it is. But I think the sort of chaotic artistic approach to the camera angles, I think, was just to emphasize how chaotic that sort of fight is within that space. I mean, again, I don't disagree with your point. Did feel out of place for like a Mission film, but it's niggly things.
And this is it though, is everything else is just great. Like all the other action scenes are just, honestly, like, I don't say perfect because I don't think perfect exists, because, you know, perfect existed, what would you talk about it? You just say it's perfect. But they are great. The problem and the climax is the deal, and it's getting the key. Get the key. And then the bad guy thinks he leaves with the key. That's, there we are. And that's literally, I'll get to it in a minute, but that's the only moment where you like, and as Kieran says, in the closing scenes, he's like, fuck, and he's pissed off, like, ah.
Yeah, it's the only time he breaks down.
Shows emotion, like, and I get that. I mean, it kind of niggly thing. And then all of a sudden, the climax now is the train's going to blow up on the bridge. And that scene is done really well as well. It was Uncharted 2. If you play the game Uncharted 2 with the trains collapsing, when the train carriages are dangling off the cliff, that's exactly what Ethan's doing in this for Grace. And it's done really well. And it's nice because throughout the entire scene, you knew none of them's going to get crushed by the grand piano. But it doesn't make it less exciting. If anything, it would have been cool if it was Benji, and then you would have probably felt like Benji's going to die, bless him. I feel like Benji probably just going to get stabbed by Gabriel.
I like how we've subtly suggested that, yeah, Benji's dying at some point. Like, let's face it, Benji's going to die. Like,
I don't think they will kill him in the next one, though, because they've already killed Ulster.
Yeah, you can't, like, double whammy it, yeah.
10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, this premise, and don't get me wrong, Terminator started doing it in 1984, but this premise of, like, the entity and something controlling the truth and whatever would not have worked as well. But in the age of when I can ask my phone to do something in a matter of seconds or find whatever out for me, and most people are the same and they rely on some sort of beta artificial intelligence and chat GPT or whatever, that does quite well. But it also leads in nicely to my kind of bad point in Gabriel, where I'm not asking for it to be, don't get me wrong, this is the only time I want to ever compare the Fast franchise to Mission Impossible, but I'm not asking it to be like, it's so-and-so's brother from the last film and you brought him in, like the Fast and Furious film, or Jason Momoa character or whatever, the new one. What you will say is, you never met Gabriel's character, and like that's a positive. You're like, it's someone from Ethan's past. That's quite cool. That's interesting. Now it's made it personal, like a classic cliche action film. But then, that's heavily alluded to. You even have little black and white bloody flashbacks with Ethan remembering him. And then the rest of Gabriel's actions is almost like he's an avatar for the entity. And he works on probability, he works on mathematics. And he even says to like Pom's character, quite like that actually, quite like that. Pom does like a face turn. He's like, you will betray me because Ethan spared your life. And that's very Terminator-esque. But what are you trying to do? Are you trying to build him up as a personal threat for Ethan? Or are you trying to make him an avatar for an artificial intelligence?
Yeah, how human is he?
How human is he? Is he just a Terminator who's been in Ethan's past? Or whatever? Again, I know... I don't know. He wasn't bad, but I just feel like...
He leaves more questions than he answers.
And he, like Kieran says, he leaves more questions than he answers. And to that point, he doesn't feel like a defined character or defined villain. And especially when this is the 7th film, when you've got other characters like Henry Cavill's character and you've got Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like Kieran says, he is the only villain who has a two-parter. So,
well, Solomon Lane had 2 parts. He had Rogue Nation.
Yeah, had Rogue Nation and Fallout. But yeah, I suppose he was in Fallout quite a bit, yeah. But it's just fun, is rather. So all those little niggly things, you just, in the time, you are just on the edge of your seat, and it is just non-stop. Number one I thought was quite cool is just how well, and like in all the other ones it does this, and this is like a really fun little niggly thing, it's how bossy looks wearing a suit. Like for a short bloke, and he's jacked, like, and also in his 60s. The scene in Italy looks great. The costume design, and Ali Plum mentioned it, not like BBC need a shout, but the idea of like she looks like David Bowie in Labyrinth, Grace's character does.
Yeah.
The long, like wavy sleeve thing, it's a different thing for a chick to wear. It's nice. I quite liked whatever Rebecca Ferguson wears. She always looks great, including an eye patch.
I thought the eye patch was going to, after seeing it in the trailer, I thought, she's going to like lose an eye. And it was like, oh, no, it's just to keep the sand out my eye, innit, when I'm using the sniper. Oh.
It's a nice, smart idea, but yeah. The other one, and this is more so to do with like Hollywood in general, but it happens a few times in this, considering like in a good way, it's nice to see like 3 women have like action roles, but especially Scarlett Johansson in the MCU, as well as Black Widow, it feels like every hot chick has to do a head scissor move. And it almost feels like...
Jumps on them, puts her legs over like their shoulders and uses that to flip them over sort of thing.
Yeah, every woman does it in Hollywood. And it's getting like... It's
a sick move though, but yeah.
It's becoming tolerant to the point where like, yeah, I get it, the woman's sexy, but why do they have to use that move every time?
I mean, yeah, I suppose it is a sexy move, but I don't see it as sexy move, if that makes sense. I see it as she is using his strength against him. He's using like, her ability of flexibility, because let's face it, women are far more flexible than men, but men are stronger than women. So she's using that flexibility as her strength to overwhelm his strength and turn that into a weakness so she can defeat him, basically. That's how I sort of see that particular move.
I don't get me wrong. I saw that particular move in 2006 when I probably only saw it 3 times. But now I've saw it 25, 30 times in the last 5 years. Honestly, I'm 90% sure Pom does it in the train scene, and Ilster does it.
Yeah, to Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Get him doing more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. maybe.
I mentioned earlier, like, I want to, shine light on Vanessa Kirby because I think it's great that she's been given more screen time in this film. And ironically enough, she's been given more screen time, but she's not actually playing herself. She's playing Hayley Atwell, who is playing her. So it's when they're on the train and like Hayley's put the mask on and she's playing as her. She did it so well because I generally thought it was Hayley performing as Alana, as the White Widow. Because what they did it was so clever, and I don't know if this was something that they've said, oh, we'll do this from the outset, or if they've done this before, but when they do the mask changes, I've never seen the eye colours change, but in this one, they show off Hayley's brown eyes when they do the face swap, because that's the big difference between the face swaps and the original White Widow. Is the White Widow, like Vanessa Kirby, she's got blue eyes, and Hayley's got these real poignant sort of brown eyes. And that was the first thing I noticed. Was like, oh, she looks completely different with the brown eyes. Like, it looks like a completely different person. And it just, the way she performed it, was so good. And like the eyes, just for me, the eyes really sold it. Because I was like, it generally feels like I'm watching Hayley perform as Vanessa Kirby's White Widow. But it's not Hayley at all, but that's all Vanessa. So she's like worked really well with Hayley to understand her mannerisms and how she's going to perform her role, to then take that into her own role, to then perform that as though she's also performing as herself. Like, I thought it was so well done that I generally really enjoyed that scene. So I have to give her a big old pat on the back for that.
I can't disagree. I feel like Vanessa Kirby, she just needs to be in more stuff. Like, she's great. If you take out like stunt performances, her performance in the train, like toward like the final act, is probably the strongest one. You are right. And it's just another thing the film can be praised for is that, yeah, because it is an action film, we describe the scenes as the train scene, the Fiat 400 scene, the Dubai airport scene. But Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise probably wrote it as, I got an idea for this stunt, that stunt, and then wrote a narrative around it. But at no point does it feel like that.
No. Like, that feels like the most logical way to create the film is like, we want to do this stunt, but how do we make it work in the film? Like, how do we incorporate that into a narrative? So I definitely think that's the way they're done, and I'm pretty sure I've even heard them in the interview say that is how they do it. But like you say, it doesn't feel like that at all. So you have to commend them on that to make it seem authentic. That the narrative was written, and then the stunts were added to that narrative, sort of thing. But it's not. It's the other way around.
It just flows incredibly well.
One final thing, I think, for me, the entity, as you've alluded to, I do feel like nowadays we are getting a few more AI villains, and I do have a hard time understanding AI villains in a sense that, you remember one time when all the villains, they were all trying to get their hands on an EMP. All you ever heard was about an EMP, and it was like, oh my god, like, why is everyone so obsessed with an EMP? Like, I don't know if the AI is becoming that new sort of trope, like, oh, the villain's an AI. I say they handle it well in this film. They don't overdo the AI, and I hope they keep that going in part 2. I hope they don't overdo it. But I think my personal problem with the AI is just that there's no human element to it, so it's just all calculations. So there's no nuance to the characters, and I think that's maybe why we see Gabriel as a bit too bland at the moment, is because he is an embodiment of the entity. I mean, maybe this is all purposeful. Maybe we're meant to see him as this bland entity.
This is what I feel like. You might be right,
Designed to trick us, to make us think, oh, he's a boring character. And it's like, no, he's designed to be boring. That's the thing. So, we might eat our words after part 2. But, yeah, that's my problem with AIs. It's just there is no humanity to them. So there's no nuance in their characterization or anything. It's just they see ones and zeros.
I come to think of it now. So there's the bit where I just praise, and I do like that scene, and I like it a lot. But, like, in narrative sense, so when Benji gets hacked by the entity.
Like, they hacked his voice, they're feeding information to Tom.
Yeah, when they hack Benji's communications and they're given in the wrong directions, who are you meant to believe that that's the entity? Or are you meant to believe that's Gabriel pretending to be the entity? Because it can't be the entity, because the whole film's about weaponizing the entity, getting the keys so you can weaponize it.
The entity's coding is already in everything, because if you recall, it's already breached its way through into the software, into the machines and stuff, basically to be like, look, see what I am capable of, I can do it. But in that instance, it is helping Gabriel because it wants Gabriel to get the key so it can set itself free.
That's how I read it, but
I mean, again, I need to watch it again, but that's how I sort of see it. Is it's not so much that the entity's not weaponized yet because it's still in the submarine, Sevastopol, but it's just because it's working with. And I'd like to know how that relationship came about, and I think that will be explored in part 2. Is how did Gabriel even get in contact with the Sevastopol and be able to be one-on-one with this entity, and how does he communicate with this entity? Is it like persons of interest and they communicate through a telephone?
yeah, it's both to its films positive and negative. Like you said, we've said it from the beginning, really, is that it gives you a lot of questions you want to know the answer for in the second one, because you're just left being more curious, particularly with Gabriel's character. Honestly, I can't, the film flows so much. I know if that was the other good thing I was going to say is, and it's shown in the trailer ever so
slightly, yeah,
is that the scene between, and Vigram's is like, oh, we can't be more important than the mission. Ethan's like, nah, you are, like, you're my friends or whatever. And that's done really well.
Your lives will mean more to me
than the mission. Or,
no, they're my own.
Yeah, and he says, they're my own.
Yeah.
And that's lovely. It's quite heartfelt. And
that has been drummed into us from like one of the very first missions. He cares. What did they say for? Like, it was, he cares about the one life as much as he cares about the next life. It's not that the many outweigh the few. Every life matters to Ethan, and he will do whatever he can to save every life and not sacrifice anyone. That's not what's said, but that's the fundamentals.
And that's what's good, really. That's what makes him such a good hero, isn't it, really? Because that is his vulnerability, is that he's not a greater good. And Kittredge even says that to him. He says, your fight for the, like, paraphrasing, but he's like, your fight for the greater good is over now. You've gone rogue for your 12th time already. But it's nice. And he puts him on a hero pedestal again, but it's not too corny.
No. I suppose something I can leave you with is I saw that Tom, we've all believed that, because this is a two-parter, like, this is going to be the end of mission. This is the conclusion of Ethan at the very least. But the cast and that have been asked it in interviews, and they've all gone, well, no one's told us it's ending, and so, never say never. And then I also saw Tom come forward and say, oh, I'd love to be doing mission films until I'm 80 and follow the footsteps of Harrison. And I'm like, shit, we got another 19 years of mission films. I'm like, I mean, I'm all for it, but I don't know how I feel about an 80-year-old. I mean, granted, Tom's going to be in better shape than Harrison, and Harrison's in better shape than Robert De Niro, but there's only so much the body can take. Tom's going to kill himself on a set. It's how I see it going. I guess we've got many more to come. And the final thing I will actually leave it with is, in an interview I saw, I can't remember who it was with or whatever, but McHugh says not even he knows how part 2 ends yet. We worked out on the day, basically. I think that's a mad way to work. I think it's a great way to work, but I also think it's a terrible way to work. They say that they have a plan, they have the script, but they're always developing it and not letting the original plan ruin the moment they're in case a better idea comes in. So, you got such things as like the location, the extras, and like props.
That's what they said in Film 4 interview, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's like, they've got all that stuff there that they have to use, but they can swap up the dialogue, they can swap up the camera angles, they can swap up, okay, instead of the chase happening this way, it's now happening that way, and, well, we're not going to do the chase at all, we're actually going to do this particular scene or that scene, and the scene with Tom and Rebecca on terrace in Venice, they literally say 2 lines to each other, and then she like hugs him sort of thing, and then it goes into the gondola scene as they're arriving up to the party. But apparently that scene has started out as like 2 pages or something, then it was 4 lines, and then it just was 2 lines, and that's just how it's like ever evolving. And I think that's a great way to work, because you're working in the moment and you're enjoying the moment and you're going with it, but you still have that narrative structure as well to work off. And I think that's just definitely works in its favour, because it hasn't really put a foot wrong despite the little niggly things we pointed out. But the fact that he doesn't even know how part 2 ends yet, it's like, oh shit.
I'm just looking at like the trivia, and I'll probably do this for more episodes really. While filming in Italy, 12 people on the set tested positive for COVID-19 as a result when filming. Tom Cruise personally paid $500,000 for an old cruise ship for the cast to crew and isolate on.
I didn't know about that.
It's probably a drop in the ocean for Tom Cruise, $500,000. That's a cool thing to do.
You have to.
You have to. Like, no one forced him to do that. That's quite cool, and it's quite interesting. I didn't know that until about 30 seconds ago. we're not going to do a pick of the week. As anticipated, I was very much looking forward to this film. Anybody who listens or knows Kieran, he was coming in his pants. And so we've had more of an extended episode than usual. Thank you for listening. That's been great.
Yeah, we appreciate it as always.
Take it easy. Like, subscribe, share, follow us. Even follow us on the street if you know what we look like. But don't be creepy.
Don't be creepy. Keep your hand out your pockets.
But thank you very much.
Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Or rather, you'll hear us. Bye.